Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you in particular to Francesca. Before I briefly say, I mean, in the spirit of people not needing too much introduction, Francesca is a very well-known, distinguished prisons ethnographer who has worked in numerous places around the world, in Bolivia, in Brazil, and now in Portugal, as well as in Italy. And her current work is, I mean, she's worked on food in prisons, religion, violence, all the big subjects. And today she's going to talk us about the coming together of some of the more important kind of events and movements of our times, the influence of Pentecostal religion in prisons and the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Francesca, over to you. Thank you.
And thank you. And hi, everybody. And I would share my PowerPoint now. Okay. Okay. This is the title of my presentation, and thank you so much for the invitation. And I'm very pleased to be here to talk about my recent research in Portuguese prisons. And I am an Italian anthropologist based in Portugal with previous long-term research in a Bolivian prison, self-governed Bolivian prison. This is my book. And this is probably an important detail to understand the theoretical choices and perspective I would like to express here as a result of being a kind of in-between researcher with fieldwork experiences in Latin American and European prison contexts. So, the main theme of my research is in Portuguese prison is religion and religious pluralism. The title of my project is Religions and Daily Life Within the Prison, an Anthropological Approach. Since 2019, I've been carrying out my ethnography in two main women's prisons in Lisbon and Oporto, and in the main males prison in Oporto. We know that at the outset of the modern institution, religion was considered pivotal to the re-education of inmates. Foucault described the way spiritual corporality enhances discipline and moral rigor in modern prison. Today, the connection between religious institution and penitentiary institution changed considerably due to prevalent understandings of secular modernity. However, religious groups and practices continue to play important roles. In this complex scenario, there are many ways to address the intimate relationship between the prison and religion. But in general, I think that studies on religion in European prisons adopt a quite binary, positive or negative stance on this topic. I call the positive one the humanitarian approach and the negative one the risk for security and order approach. About the humanitarian approach, a common positive understanding of the place of religious groups in prison stress their role in addressing rehabilitation and prison deficiencies resulting from state disinvestment. This aspect is especially important in the light of the global transition towards neoliberal policies and an emphasis on security within the penal system. However, this very emphasis on security can entail a negative interpretation of religious dynamics within the prison space. And this is the second approach I highlighted, the risk for security and order approach. The point is that religious freedom opens prison space to other than traditional faiths, Catholic and Protestant. As a number of studies on religion in European prison have shown, religious freedom represents sort of stress test for the prison institution prompted by growing religious diversity in urban space. Here you can see bibliography about religion in European prison. So sometimes other faiths are charged with prejudices and perceived as a problem. And this is the case of Islam, which predominantly occupies the academic literature on religion in global North prisons, especially in terms of risk for security. As a matter of fact, religion behind bars has become a theme for the prison institution, the media, and academics for after September 11 and after the terrorist attacks in Europe. Since then, the prison environment has been considered the main breeding ground for extremism, fanatism, and radicalization. This has resulted in an increase in the use of secularism and sometimes discriminatory devices to the detriment, especially of the Islamic faith believers in the United States, in France, as well as in other countries considered a target for terrorists. The focus on religious practices in prison has therefore shifted mainly to the control of the mechanism of Islamic proselytism because of a possible threat to society outside. This has triggered two main opposing consequences. On the one hand, the securitarian trend has turned the spotlight on Islam in prison, while on the other hand, it has led to the invisibility of the rest of the religious panorama. By the same token, for example, in French prisons, Béraud, D'Alembert, and Rostand point out that the increasing level of attention paid to Islam is not accompanied by a real interest in the religion, whose presence is not formalized in any data collection or statistics, as if the subjects were a real taboo. In their research, these authors address the ordinary, everyday aspects of all the religions practiced within the French penitentiary facilities. They describe how their institutional interlocutors barely understood the object of their investigation, since it wasn't specifically about Islam and the implicit radicalization problem. It means that the securitarian turn and the Muslim and terrorist alarm have overshadowed the presence of other denominations in prison and their related inner dynamics. The securitarian turn concerns also Portuguese prison. However, I found there a quite different situation due to the high percentage of imprisoned people from Portuguese-speaking African countries and Brazil, who are mainly Pentecostals, and due to the related presence of Pentecostal denomination offering their service inside the prisons. Because of this new religious scenario, I decided to delve into academic literature focusing on Pentecostalism in penitentiary context. This literature comes especially from Latin American prisons. It demonstrates that new Pentecostal movements have found innovative ways to blend religion, charity, order, and security in secular prison environments. In Portuguese prison, powerful Brazilian neo-Pentecostal denomination, Igreja Universal do Reino de Deus, in English, Universal Church of the Kingdom of God, sparks my interest. Its presence and support to Portuguese prisoners is all-encompassing, as one of the Universal Church leaders underlines in the following interview. He said, We have helped many prisoners. We have a group of more than 300 volunteers in the country, more than 300 volunteers for the prison, just for the prison. We are in every Portuguese prison. In Brazil, which is our headquarters, we have a lot of work. We are also in 160 countries around the world, and we have helped many prisoners to leave prison. We donate Bibles, hygiene kits, clothes, and we also help the family of the inmates. We take a bag of food, we take food to eat, we take clothes. No matter if the prisoner doesn't participate in the service, he, she simply must speak to us and we go there to support the family. There is no point in telling a person to pray without giving what is necessary for the body. Food, body needs. Clothes, body needs. Moreover, Brazilian prisons are a management model for the Universal Church in Portuguese prison. This is partly because Brazil is the headquarters from which the work of the Universal Church branches out, and partly because Brazil is where prison Pentecostalism represents an important section of the Pentecostal movement. From this perspective, we must extrapolate, at least in part, the Universal Church logic of evangelical conquest of the Portuguese prison. And this is a term they use very often, conquest, and they use this term inside and outside the prison environment. So just to give some more details about the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God. The founder, the Bishop Macedo, Edir Macedo, is by far the richest pastor in Brazil. He is in the Forbes billionaire list because of his fortune. He's the owner of an important Brazilian television channel, Rede Record, a weekly newspaper, Folha Universal, and a Brazilian bank, Banco Renner. The Universal Church rapidly grew into one of the biggest and most controversial religions in Brazil, mostly thanks to its prosperity ideology doctrine, which holds that faith and commitment to a church are rewarded with wealth. With these premises, in this presentation, I explored the religious security order nexus in time of pandemic. My main question is, what happens when secular institutions experience a crisis, draw the interest of a powerful neo-Pentecostal group? So I explore what could be interpreted as a kind of post-secular cooperation between a Portuguese prison administration and this powerful mega church in time pandemics, namely in 2020, 2021. Within the Portuguese prison, the Universal Church respects local democratic norms and legal frameworks, while simultaneously remaining committed to its mission and spiritual conquest agenda through specific strategies and evangelization goals. Let me introduce this scenario and my argument by telling you an anecdote. In December 2021, in one of the biggest female prisons of the country, Roman Catholic prison chaplains were keen to offer the Catholic inmates small gifts for Christmas, some chocolates. However, they feared it would be interpreted as proselytism, a form of illegal evangelism considered particularly unethical within the destitute prison environment. In the same prison, for Christmas, the Universal Church offered a small bag of chocolates accompanied by a card with a psalm and the church logo to all 300 women. The treats were handed out by the prison director during the collective Christmas Eve dinner. Strikingly, the prison administrators didn't regard the action of the Universal Church as illegal or unethical. They welcomed the initiative and saw it not as proselytism, but as a humanitarian, impartial, and disinterested gesture encouraged by the toughness of the pandemic period. Well, in my opinion, this anecdote shows an important achievement in Universal Church conquest agenda of the prison space. How is it possible that in a secular state, a megachurch such as the Universal Church was able to convince the prison administrator that their intervention has nothing to do with proselytism and faith? Before discussing how the Universal Church became embedded in women's prison, I want quickly to point out that the Portuguese law on religious freedom guarantees freedom of conscience, religion, and belief. Nonetheless, Catholicism is legally favored through the Concordat, an agreement signed between Portuguese state and the Holy See. As a result, Catholic groups are automatically integrated into the prison environments, often having dedicated worship place or a proper chapel, especially in those prisons built before the Republican era. Religious minorities access prison through a complex bureaucracy. Once inside, their presence is not granted. It explains why minorities, especially Pentecostals, usually stress the connection between religion, security, and their internal order to secure their presence inside. Pentecostals tend to present themselves like a sort of normalizing tool, a therapeutic, humanitarian device devoted to face the structural and everyday shortcomings of prison system. Universal Church perfectly fits this model. It offers help to the institution, often expressed in disciplinary terms, and I quote from the web page of the Universal Church in a section dedicated to the work of the Universal Church in jail. So this is the part I want to quote. Since the evangelization group of the Universal Church overcame the barriers of exclusion and started social work, in a short time, the change in the inmates' behavior who actively participate in the meetings of the Universal Church inside the unit drew the attention of the directors. They observed that gradually the inmates began to behave differently. During the research, many women talked with me about their change in relationship with prison guards and the way religion helps to keep conflict under control. Participation in Pentecostal worships and not in Mass was a new topic during their conversation with the social reinsertion official who evaluates their behavioral progress. The point was to demonstrate the willingness to be seen as not merely believers, which is not relevant for the secular institution, but as people embedded in the institution systems or rules supported by the religious engagement. Paula, the universal member in charge of running the religious service in the women's prison and my most trusted interlocutor, said, "I often speak with the director. If we can help a prisoner, it's one less prisoner who gives problems." Before the pandemic, Paula and her assistant Elvira were very busy putting inmates in touch with their loved ones, intermediating with sons and daughters and other family members contacted by Paula via telephone or social media, Universal Church social media. The pandemic situation amplified these connections. Moreover, during pandemic, Universal Church started a massive donation campaign. This makes the congregation very appealing for many women in need, their families, and the institution. As a result, Universal's donation provided the penitentiary space. Prison staff say we donate too much, Paula told me frequently. Many donations reached those who participated in worship, those who simply made requests, and in some cases, all the inmates, as in the Christmas gift anecdote. The institution regulates Universal Church donation and makes the delivery. In the case of a large amount of donations without a specific recipient, the prison service evaluates the delivery criteria. Prison governance advocates for the democratic equal access to material benefits as long as inmates deserve it. The most important was impartiality and meritocracy. Consequently, the rationale behind delivering donation entails evaluating who truly deserves assistance, who might be trying to deceive, such as by reselling the items to fellow inmates. Impartiality and meritocracy were soon applied to all kinds of donation, personal and mass. Consequently, Universal Church staff and prison guards cooperated in terms of understanding real needs by investigating data based on the economic status of the inmates, whether she had a job in prison, whether she received visits from family members, whether she received packages from the outside, and the economic condition of family of the prisoner. Universal Church acquired an all-round view of the world of the inmates within and far beyond the limits of the prison, thanks to its role of intermediary between inside and outside. Meritocracy triggered close vigilance and snitching among the inmates, who were committed to reporting to Universal members misappropriation, financial support from outside, trafficking inside the prison of goods acquired by donation, homosexuality, and other unorthodoxies. Mass and personal donation created a climate of constant control involving prison staff, guards, and inmates who alerted Universal Church members about prisoner real lifestyle, the wealthier living condition of some, and the more authentic religiosity of others. It made Universal Church more familiar and trustworthy for the prison managers. During the pandemic, according to Paula, we gained the trust of the institution, and that gave us a lot more freedom to then be able to work, one thing cooperates with the other. Impartiality and meritocracy applied to charity were the basis of a strong cooperation between the prison management and the congregation inside the prison space, to the point that inmates asked for Paula, and I quote her, to talk to the prison management to help them get benefits. They ask a lot for me to talk to them to be sent away, that I intercede to reduce their prison time, so they ask a lot for that. This intermediation implies a remarkable empowerment of the religious leader. Paula acquired certain bargaining skill, at least in the eyes of the Universal Church community of believers. The appeasement of prison population, the negotiation with the institution, the bargaining skills are in line with prison Pentecostalism, especially where they can govern a portion of the prison space, as in many Latin American penitentiaries. I argue that, like the French penitentiary system, the Portuguese one strongly emphasized its secular nature, marked by religious freedom, equal rights for all, and acceptance of diverse faiths. However, I think that COVID-19 pandemic has been a great chance for empowerment and progress in the universal church conquest. The health emergency and the many consequences it entails for prison management were crucial for the universal church to transform proselytism into humanitarian action and religion into a powerful tool involved in prisoners' daily life, vigilance, and security of the prison system. In the Portuguese scenario, prison guards, prison staff, universal members operate side by side using the secular as a governmental category, choosing what counts as religion and what doesn't. It reveals a fluid picture of power's relationship in prison, its multi-sided authorities, and related gray zones. In conclusion, I argue that pandemic has reshaped and strengthened the relationship between prison and universal church, leading to a form of mutual, unspoken, and unspeakable dependence. In fact, while the pandemic notably exacerbated feelings of frustration and isolation among prisoners and deteriorated material conditions within correctional facilities, donations provided by the Universal Church aided needy women, alleviated tension, and helped to secure order. The cooperation between officially incompatible actors created a window of alterated conditions in which humanitarian and religious discourses could flourish, contributing to the core aspects of institutional life and management, policing, and security. I suggest that the influential Universal Church establish a foothold in prison by capitalizing on the institution's crisis during the COVID-19 pandemic. Universal Church didn't overtly challenge the relationship between state and religion in Portugal. On the contrary, it promoted a gradual process of adaptation and penetration through humanitarian actions. Exploring humanitarian government as a tension between a relationship of domination and a relationship of assistance, I exposed the creation of Universal Church anomalous proselytizing apparatus during the global pandemic as a strategy that pushes the youth from the margin to the center of power in the prison institution. Exploring this rationale, I showed how emergent religions marked by paradigmatic neoliberal form of organization can become embedded stealthily in state institutions such as the prison, a secular European prison. Igreja Universal do Reino de Deus in Portugal is a conservative force with strong patriarchal values oriented by neoliberal logics. Its social engagement is not disruptive of the status quo. When interacting with the state, its action depicts and mimesis with a democratic mindset and secular perspectives. Apparently, Universal Church members foresee a world with prison ruled by Universal Church and the state. This embryonic partnership relies on ambiguities and contradictions. It raises many questions rather than solutions. At present, this ethnography illustrates how a church like that can navigate secularism and its ambiguities in a Portuguese women's prison. I can say if I depicted the creation of a state of exception at a time of emergency suspension or a new post-secular governmentality that fits both the prison ideology and the neo-Pentecostal theology. In that case, it would suggest a new prison order that appears impossible from a Eurocentric stance, but more familiar from a perspective from the South. And thank you so much.